Hi, I'm Charles Moore, sitting in for Althea Player. My guest today is Dr. Tom Breaux. He is the manager of the Orange County Arthropod Department. Welcome to Focus, Tom.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here with you today.
Arthropod is not a word you hear every day.
No, it's not.
As a matter of fact, I told a friend I was hosting the show, and she said, well, what are you guys talking about? I said, well, we're going to talk about Arthropod. And she actually went and looked the word up, and she didn't see how that related to Orange County. She actually called up the library to see if she can get a better definition or understanding, and she said that I made the whole thing up. So help us out. Arthropod.
Well, arthropod is just a fancy biological term that refers to a group of animals that have jointed legs. It actually means joint-footed animals. And this includes the crustaceans, the ticks, the mites, the spiders, and also the insects. And the insects, of course, includes mosquitoes. And
Lobsters
lobsters would be, you eat some of the crustaceans, crabs and lobsters and so forth. Most people don't really know what arthropod is, and that's why in a lot of the publications of the county you'll see us in quotation mosquito control. So I think long term we're going to probably change the name to mosquito control. It's a lot easier for people to remember, and it's something they understand. So, but arthropod just is a group of animals that are closely related.
Basically, mosquito control.
Basically, we are mosquito control agency.
Mosquitoes, other than being a nuisance, actually, why do we try to control mosquitoes?
Well, we control mosquitoes for two reasons, basically. One is that they are capable of transmitting many diseases to both man and animals, and also because of the annoyance factor, quality of life issues. We know mosquitoes can adversely affect productivity, both with people and also with animals. Tourism, of course, is very big here, and we know that a lack of mosquito control would have a negative impact on tourism. Nobody would want to come to Orange County and Orlando to be bitten by mosquitoes. As a matter of fact, the county we're sitting in now, in 1824, I believe it was actually named Mosquito County. When they first named the county, they couldn't think of a better term, and they called it Mosquito County. And in the U.S. Senate or Congress, I don't remember which, but John Randolph of Virginia said that Florida was not worth developing because it was just full of frogs, quagmires, alligators, and mosquitoes. So we have a very long-term history of involvement with mosquitoes. And if it wasn't for mosquito control, Florida wouldn't be what it is today.
Oh, so you're very active.
Oh, yes. We have a very active department in which we control mosquitoes. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'll tell you exactly how we're organized and so forth. And I do have some slides we'll show.
Okay, now you say that the mosquitoes will affect the productivity of animals.
Yes.
Can you give us an example?
Yes. We have data, for instance, that shows when mosquito populations reach a certain level, beef cattle will stop gaining weight because they're wasting a lot of energy just fighting off the mosquito attack.
Basically, it'll affect the beef industry.
Milk-producing cattle will stop producing as much milk as they should because they're wasting a lot of energy just fighting off mosquitoes. And we have studies that show that we don't have to really begin controlling mosquitoes until they reach a certain level, at least controlling them on animals. Now with people, that's a whole different story. We don't have an economic threshold for people because you might be bothered by one mosquito. One mosquito would absolutely drive you crazy. And someone else, your next door neighbor who's been in Florida for a long, long time, well, 10 mosquitoes aren't really bothering me very much because I was here in the old days before they had organized mosquito control. So we don't have thresholds for people. It's very, very difficult to establish. But in animal systems, we do, and in cattle in particular. So in other instances, we know that they adversely affect human productivity. There have been big public works construction projects at the federal level that have been stopped. Workers just walked off the job because there were too many mosquitoes biting on them, and they refused to go back until the mosquitoes were controlled, and then they went back to work on the project. So it's in addition to the disease problem that they pose, it's also a quality of life issue. If we didn't have mosquito control, our quality of life would be adversely affected.
Okay, now you say the disease. What type of disease? mosquitoes?
Well, diseases on a worldwide basis transmit many diseases, but they all basically fall into three very broad categories. And one are the viral diseases. The second are the protozoan diseases, such as malaria. And the third disease group are the worms. But fortunately, here in the United States, we don't have any of those diseases that affect humans. However, we do have dog heartworm here in Florida, and that is a type of a worm that is transmitted by several different species of mosquitoes to dogs.
Okay, that's a very common disease.
It is. In the southeastern United States, if you have a dog that is outside and it's not on some sort of a preventative, it's probably going to get heartworms over the long run. To get back to people, we have had malaria here in the United States. The last big epidemic in the southeastern United States was in 1945 in the southeast, in Alabama in particular. And we have viral diseases. Here in Florida, that's what people are probably most aware of. We have eastern equine encephalitis. We have St. Louis encephalitis that appears occasionally. And there are a lot of other encephalitides, viral groups that we know are here, and they just don't pop up as often as these others do.
Yeah, I can remember about 3 years ago we was having a real bad problem, and the message was that you shouldn't really go out at night, and if you go out at night, make sure you cover yourself up.
Yes, yes, I believe that was in 1990. We had an epidemic, or an outbreak rather, here, and to show you the impact that it could potentially have on just tourism, for instance, we had calls from all over the United States, from every single one of the states, all the provinces in Canada, and several foreign countries to ask was it okay to come to Orlando to visit. And of course, that would have had an extremely negative impact on tourism if it would have continued than it did. And of course, then on the other side of the coin, we did have human cases, and I believe at that time we had one death attributable to the encephalitis. So encephalitis is always out there. It's primarily eastern encephalitis is a bird disease. It occurs in natural populations of birds. And when the virus builds up in the bird population and the mosquito populations build up, those mosquitoes that would normally be feeding on those birds and maintaining that cycle end up feeding on horses, hence the name equine encephalitis, or on people. And so the virus spills out into the human population, and that's when we get the outbreaks, or in some cases epidemics.
I know when the AIDS virus came to be, a lot of people were concerned about whether or not mosquitoes can carry the AIDS virus from one person to another.
Yes.
And we have found that that's not the case.
Yes. We still get questions on that, and every time an article like that appears in the popular press, we get calls on it. And to date, there have been many, many scientific studies that have examined this, and we don't have any evidence at all that it is transmitted by any insects. So we're lucky in that respect.
I know it's funny when I was up in Boston, and I was out on a baseball field, and I felt a bite, and I didn't know what it was, but it felt quite different. And I looked, and it was a mosquito. And the reason why I was surprised, because it felt different than a mosquito bite here in Florida.
You had a northern mosquito.
Yeah.
No, different species of mosquitoes inflict different bites. And for instance, the Aedes group, which is a great big group of mosquitoes, which we have several of here in Florida, inflict pretty painful bites. And Serophora, another genus of mosquitoes, inflict painful bites. Whereas the Culex mosquitoes and Anopheline mosquitoes, they might bite you and you never really feel it. The reason you do feel the bite, by the way, is not any sort of a mechanical thing that they're doing to you. It's the amount of saliva that the mosquito is injecting in when she bites you.
So she's injecting...
She's injecting an anticoagulant in there to keep the blood flowing, because she's taking blood. And Aedes mosquitoes and Serophora inject large amounts of this, and it's actually your body's reaction to it. You're having a reaction to a foreign antigen going into you, and that's why you get the pain. So we know for a fact that if, for instance, you cut the salivary ducts of those mosquitoes and let them bite people, people don't feel the bite. So it's not that the mosquito is any bigger or anything else, it's just the amount of mosquito saliva that she's injecting in when she bites.
Let's just say a mosquito lands on your arm. How long before you start to feel the bite?
Well, if she's going to bite, she'll make a couple of attempts. They have sensory pegs on their feet. And when they land on you, they get a lot of information about whether or not you're going to taste good to them through your sweat, okay, and secretions from your skin. She will then attempt to bite, and if you taste good, whatever that might mean to a mosquito, then she'll go ahead and start actually sucking blood up. And it's at that time where she's injecting the saliva. And so you'd start feeling, if you're going to feel it, you'd feel it at that time. But when they land on you and they just probe, you generally don't feel that at all until she actually starts taking blood meal.
Yeah, I guess one of the strange things is that there's times when you may have been bitten by a mosquito and you don't know it, and maybe 10 minutes later you see a nice little bump.
Yes,
that
again is your body's reaction to that foreign antigen, in this case the saliva, going in, and your body's just reacting to it. So that's why it's a delayed reaction. Some people are very sensitive to mosquitoes, other people are not. And as you get exposed to mosquito bites over a long time, you become desensitized to them. It's just sort of like taking a series of allergy shots.
So you don't know
slowly build you up, right?
Anyone that's allergic to mosquito bites?
I don't know anybody that's allergic to mosquito bites in a sense that they would go into an anaphylactic shock or anything, but there are definitely differences in people. Some people are really bothered by them, and what happens a lot of times if you are bothered by them, you'll start scratching the mosquito bite, and when you scratch it, you get a secondary infection going in here because you've introduced bacteria from your skin or wherever, and that's actually causing the problems. It's not the bites, it's just the scratching that you're doing and trying to relieve the itch that's causing a secondary infection. So that can be a problem in some people.
Repellent.
Repellent.
Skin so soft.
Skin so soft.
Perfume.
Perfume. Some of those are, some perfumes are attractant to mosquitoes. Some people will swear by Skin So Soft. There was one study in scientific literature that actually looked at Skin So Soft, and they thought that there might be a component in that was actually a repellent to a mosquito. Other people say, no, it's not really a repellent effect, it's just that you've made yourself so greasy that you aren't attractive to mosquitoes. But there's a whole science out there of what makes you attractive to mosquitoes. And there are companies that invest a lot of money in this so that they can then develop repellents. But we know, for instance, that some people are more attractive to mosquitoes than others. And they're studying and trying to find out why that's a fact.
That was my next question. Do we know why?
Well, we know some of it. We don't know all of it. For instance, if you have O positive blood, you're more likely to be bitten by a mosquito. If all other factors are equal, you're more likely to be bitten by a mosquito than someone with AB, for instance. So, but it's a very, very complex, this feeding behavior in mosquitoes is a very complex thing, in which we try to simplify. But scientists are studying this to determine why a mosquito would prefer biting you or biting me or somebody else in this room. And the idea is to do that so then they can develop a repellent against that. Some people swear by taking large doses of vitamin B1. They take large doses of vitamin B1 and they say, well, we aren't bothered by mosquitoes. And I think most physicians really don't have a problem with that because vitamin B1 is water soluble. So you're only going to take in as much as you can and you're just going to excrete the rest. It's not like a fat soluble vitamin where you could poison yourself with it. So large doses might give you tingling in the face and so forth, but it's not going to really poison you. So some people just swear by vitamin B1. Other people say garlic.
Okay.
You know, keeps vampires away and mosquitoes. And actually there are some studies being looked at right now about does taking large doses of garlic, does that actually protect you from mosquito attack?
Okay, so, hold that thought right there. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back after this.
Announcing Orange County Building and Zoning Department's convenient youth fax service. Apply for permits including electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and roofing. Fence and mobile home applications are accepted by fax also, or make payments on licensing fees and reinspection fees, all by fax. For details on our new service, call Orange County's Building and Zoning Department at 836-5522, or better yet, fax 836-9734.
Welcome back. I'm Charles Moore, sitting in for Althea Claire. My guest today is Dr. Thomas Breaux. He's the manager of the Orange County Arthropod Department, and we're talking about mosquitoes. Mosquitoes. Do all mosquitoes suck blood?
No, most people think that all mosquitoes do, but in actuality, only the female mosquito sucks blood.
Only the female?
Only the female. And there are some species of mosquito that don't take blood meals at all. And those we use in a biological control program because the immature mosquitoes of those particular ones are actually predators on other mosquito species. So the immatures actually eat other mosquito larvae. So the fact that the adults don't take a blood meal, we can use that and rear them and try to establish them. But only the female takes a blood meal, and she does that to get the amino acids in your blood or in the host blood in order to produce a batch of eggs. So that's why they're after a blood meal. They routinely feed in a sense that when they're hungry, just like other insects do, they visit flowers to get the nectar. So both the male and female mosquitoes do that, but only the females take a blood meal.
Exactly where do they live?
Well, they live almost everywhere on the face of the earth. We find them down in gold mines in South Africa. We find them on tops of the highest mountains. People tend to think that mosquitoes are really tropical, but we've had malaria epidemics in Norway. So they're very opportunistic. They live in a lot of different places. The one thing that they all do have in common, however, is that all the immature stages take place in water.
So they must have water.
They must have water in some way, shape, or form. So they all have water habitats, and we use that when we try to look for them and control them, knowing that they're living in water. We know where we have to look.
Okay, now you say that mosquitoes eat other mosquitoes?
The immatures, the larvae mosquitoes, the equivalent of the caterpillar and the butterfly, feeds on other mosquito larvae. There's a genus called Toxorynchides, which is a big long word, but it's a pretty big mosquito. And we have them here in Orange County. And the immatures of those mosquitoes actually feed on other mosquito larvae. So they're predaceous, they're predators.
Is there such thing as a mosquito hawk?
Oh yeah, there's a mosquito hawk. They're here in Florida. I guess you see the postcards. It's either the Florida state bird. It's either that or a mosquito. And mosquito hawks do actually feed on mosquitoes, as do a lot of other things. And we know that they're out there doing their jobs because we just aren't totally overrun by mosquitoes. But we couldn't depend on those completely as a sole source of mosquito control because they just don't keep the populations down low enough. But there are other things that feed on mosquito immatures too. There are a lot of beetle larvae that are in the water. Of course, gambusia, the fish, little mosquito-eating minnows that we use. They'll eat mosquito larvae. So there are a lot of things in the water that are actually feeding on these larvae.
How big do mosquitoes get? What is the largest mosquito?
One of the larger mosquitoes would be the Toxorynchides, and also the Seraphra produce some very large, relatively speaking, mosquitoes. But by and large, they're not that big. They're typical mosquito size. And as a matter of fact, we have people call up saying, "Well, I've got tons of mosquitoes resting on my walls, on my garage." And in actuality, those are little midges, non-biting midges that just happen to emerge and then rest on these walls, and they look like mosquitoes. People also mistake the big crane flies, the mosquito-looking thing that's about this big, and it will sit on the wall. It looks just like a mosquito, except it belongs to a different family. It doesn't feed on blood. It just looks like a gigantic mosquito.
And actually, how many type of mosquitoes are there?
Well, on a worldwide basis, there are 3,500 or so
3,500
different kinds. In Florida, we have about 72. And here in Orange County, we have about 38 different kinds of mosquitoes, different species of mosquitoes.
So there, one particular type of mosquito will not breed with another type of mosquito?
No. Out in nature, members of one species only breed with the same type of mosquito. They're members of the same species. They don't interbreed out in the field. Now, you can do that somewhat in the laboratory for closely related species, but out in nature they don't. They just stay with their own species.
How long do they live in general?
That's kind of a loaded question. In nature, probably the females can live, if you want an average of a month. Males only live about 7 to 10 days. They just mate with a female and then die. They do their job and then they die. Females live about 30 days, and that's under a lot of pressure from all these different things we talked about, predators, finding meals, so forth and so on. But we know for a fact that some females do or can live longer than that because they overwinter. They spend the winter in some areas of the world, in the country, as adult females. And so we know that they have to live longer than 30 days because they sort of hibernate for the winter, come out the following spring. So they have to pass the winter as an adult. Some of them do that, and some of them do it as larvae or eggs. So in general, we get that asked that a lot. In general, it's about 30 days on average. In the laboratory, we can have them live a lot longer because we have ideal conditions there. But in general, about 30 days.
Okay, so you said earlier that the mosquitoes need water to survive.
Yes.
How long does that water have to be standing?
Okay. Well, the water has to be there for the female to deposit her eggs. Now, after she's taken a blood meal, she'll go and rest in a secluded spot and start digesting that blood meal and producing eggs. After about 3 or 4 days, she goes and looks for water. Now, mosquitoes in general do this in 2 ways. They either lay their eggs on the surface of the water,
okay,
one at a time, or in what we call rafts. They sort of stack them like cordwood, if you will, on its side. Or they look for a moist area near water and put their eggs in little depressions along that moist zone. And they lay them one at a time. Those particular mosquitoes that do that, that egg has to be flooded by water, covered, before it can hatch.
Okay, so you said it's one at a time.
Yes.
About how many eggs would she lay at that time?
Well, it depends on the species of the mosquito, again, the type of blood she's had, which number of blood meal or egg batches it is, her first, second, third, or fourth. But if you want an average, they can lay anywhere between 100, 150 to 200 at a time. And again, it just depends on how old she is, what kind of blood she took, because she has a preference for blood. There are some mosquitoes that prefer to feed only on birds.
Okay.
There are some mosquitoes that prefer only to feed on large mammals. There are some mosquitoes that prefer to feed on people. There are some mosquitoes that will just feed on anything. So it just depends on what type of blood she was forced to take. And that will determine how many eggs she's going to lay, along with the other factors that we talked about.
Okay, now your department is out all the time.
Yes.
Doing tests.
Yes.
You have a way of trying to control the mosquito population.
Yes.
People that have problems in their community with mosquitoes, they call you.
Yes.
And you guys come out.
We get questions like that all the time. It's been you know, a week and a half or 2 weeks, and we haven't seen the spray truck at night. And what are you all doing? Well, in actuality, we have people out Monday through Friday, all day long, all throughout the county. And again, it's to control and look for the immature mosquitoes. And then in the evening hours is when you see the quote, the spray truck coming around. And that's done primarily in the evening. And most people associate mosquito control with that spray truck. But in actuality, that's only a part of what we do. As I said, we have technicians out in every part of the county, every day, looking for mosquito breeding sites, water, determining where that water is going to be, and determining if there's any mosquitoes in that water and treating it accordingly. It might just be have you dump the swimming pool in your yard, the kids' pool, or get the water off your boat tarp. It might be something as simple as that, or it might be just clearing a ditch that's been stopped up with a shovel and let the water flow freely. Or it might be that they actually have to apply something to the water in order to kill the immature stages. So we have people out all the time, not just in the evening hours. And on a routine basis, in the absence of any encephalitis going on, we generally spray in the evening hours. And we generally don't start much earlier than about an hour before dusk, and will go on through the evening hours. We talked about mosquitoes having a blood preference. In general, across all of those species that we talked about, they're most active looking for a blood meal 1 hour either side of dusk or dawn.
Really?
So in general, we want to do the most good. We try to hit that time frame when they're out looking for a blood meal. Now, there are exceptions to that. There are some mosquitoes that are looking for a blood meal and flying around between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
We know there are exceptions to every rule, but in general, right after dusk is when they're most active, and they're going to be active throughout the night, but the most concentrated activity is at 1 hour either side of dusk and dawn. So,
Now, we know that they're very active during the summertime.
yes.
When do they start to slow down and pick up as the season
Well,
starts to change?
here in Florida, we really don't have a down season, if
Oh,
you
really?
will. Now, if we were somewhere else further north, we might be able to count on a winter months of not having any activity.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to get pretty cold, and it has to stay cold for a week or so to really reduce that activity. If we just get a cold snap that lasts 2 or 3 days, it's really not enough to put a dent in the populations. They will continue to breed throughout the year. So we do slow down somewhat in the winter months, but we're active all year round.
Yeah, because I saw you speak at a luncheon, and you had a little aquarium,
Yes.
and you asked the question, how many mosquitoes do we think is in the aquarium?
Yes.
Actually, I don't think anyone ever answered.
No, I don't think they did. We must have had in excess of 20,000 mosquitoes, and that was from one location in Orlando. And that was just from one location. So.
And you tried to bring the aquarium here, but was it because of the weather?
Well, because of the cold snap that we've just recently experienced and the torrential rains that we had, the places that we could normally go and account on getting a lot of these, we just didn't have a lot of them. It wasn't quite as dramatic as that one at that luncheon. But they're still out there. They are always out there in low numbers, and of course they're always taking the blood meal and they're always producing more mosquitoes. But we do have a somewhat slowed down season in the winter, but we never really stop. There are districts elsewhere in the United States that they sort of, between December and February, they don't even go out controlling mosquitoes. That's when they're working on their equipment and everything for the upcoming season. But here in Florida, we really don't have that luxury because they're always there. They're in lower numbers, but they're always there.
Okay, you had some slides that you brought with you, but unfortunately we're running out of time.
Sure.
And what I'd like to do, I'd like to invite you back,
Be
because I
happy.
know there's a lot more information that you have for us.
Be happy to come back.
All
Be happy
right.
to come back.
Also, if anyone would like to call and have someone come out if they're having a problem and they want you guys to come out and inspect their yard or area, what's the number for them to call?
Yes, it's 352-4370. Give us a call. Let us know what's going on, and we'll have one of our larva-sighting technicians and inspectors out within a day, hopefully, 2 days at the most. And they'll come out and take a look at what's going on. And it would be helpful for us, too, if when people call in, if they could tell us the time of day that they're being bothered and relative numbers. In other words, the mosquitoes are, being bitten by, or having 5 of them land on me in 1 minute or 10 seconds or whatever. So we can get an idea. It's also very important that they tell us what time of the day, because that'll give us a clue of what types of mosquitoes are bothering them. But we'll send somebody out, take a look at it, and then assess the problem and correct it if we can.
Okay, and that number again?
352-4370.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Sure.
That's Tom Breaux. He's the manager of the Orange County Arthropod Department. I'm Charles Moore, sitting in for Althea Player. Until next time, stay focused.